To order the September 11th, 2020 meeting of the Metropolitan Charter Revision Commission. I would first ask that Ms. Waits call the roll.
Yes. Ms. Behan.
Present.
Mr. Branstetter.
Present.
Mr. Harden.
Present.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Present.
Mr. Murphy.
Present.
Ms. Short-Jones.
Present.
Mr. Wilson.
Present.
We have 7 commissioners in attendance.
Good, thank you. And thank everyone for being here and for participating in this meeting. It's a little unusual to be doing it electronically in this day and age. There is one thing that I need to state due to the executive order from the governor on electronic meetings, and I will do that now, as required by Governor Lee's Executive Order 16, as extended by Orders 34, 51, and 60. Would someone please make a motion that today's meeting of the Metropolitan Charter Revision Commission constitutes essential business of the metropolitan government, and that meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. So if someone would make that motion, I would appreciate it.
Mr. Wilson, I so move.
Okay, I first heard Mr. Wilson. Was there a second?
Second.
Okay, did you get that, Elizabeth?
Was that Ms. Short-Jones?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. The next order of business on our agenda is the approval of our minutes of the April 12, 2019 meeting. That was our last meeting. You have received a slightly revised version this morning. All it did was change some, didn't change the substance at all. All it did was make some kind of procedural changes and some tenses, and just to kind of clarify and make it read a little more easily. If everyone has had a chance to review those minutes, we'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
Ms. Howell, I so moved. I move the waiving of the reading of the minutes.
A second.
Okay, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Now, Elizabeth, and I do have one question, and this may also be a Bob Cooper or Alex Dickerson question. Are we supposed to do each motion with a roll call, or is that only when we get to the charter amendments?
I can answer that. That's every motion must be roll call.
Okay, so then why don't we go back and do the roll call on the first motion that we did, which is the motion to conduct essential business electronically. So, Elizabeth, would you mind calling the roll on that?
Absolutely. Ms. Behan.
Aye.
Mr. Branstetter.
Aye.
Mr. Harden.
Aye.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Short-Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, and then on the motion to approve the minutes, we have a roll call on that also.
Yes. Ms. Behan.
Aye.
Mr. Branstetter.
Aye.
Mr. Harden. We'll come back. Ms. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Short-Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
And Mr. Harden.
I don't see him on the attendees list. Did we lose?
Must have.
We might get somebody to call him and see if he can call.
Yeah, he was the call-in user, so maybe his call dropped, but I'll get Kevin to unmute we got that number. I'll check on it.
Yeah, he did let me know earlier that he would not be joining on screen, that he didn't have Wi-Fi where he was, but he would call in. So it could be that he lost his connection. While someone's trying to get Mr. Harden, Ms. Waits, would you mind going over the appeal rights?
Yes, after a contested hearing, if a party wishes to appeal a decision made by the commission here, she may do so by filing a writ of certiorari in Chancery Court within 60 days. Any party wishing to pursue an appeal is encouraged to seek independent legal counsel to ensure that all deadlines and procedural requirements are met. And if I may, Mr. Branstetter, I was going to take a brief moment to acknowledge the elected officials that are on our call.
Good. Thank you. That would be great. Thank you for doing that.
Okay. In order of just how they're seated in the council chamber, we have Councilman Mendez, Councilman Glover, Councilman Syracuse, Councilman Rosenberg, and we have Council Lady Henderson joining us. And I hope that I have acknowledged everyone on the call. And for our record purposes, we also have in attendance Metro Legal Director Bob Cooper, Metro Legal Attorney Alex Dickerson, Legislative Affairs Director for the Mayor's Office Mike Jameson, Council Director John Cooper. I hope that I have captured everyone who's joining us at this time.
Okay, I think we've got Hal back on. I see his speaker's not on. Have you verified that Hal's back? Hal, can you hear us?
Well, that wasn't the number we were given from him, so I don't know if that's him or not.
I'll look because I have a couple of numbers, so I'm going to check it for you real quick.
Cell phone is a 512 number, if that helps. But
yeah, I agree with you. I'm not confirmed.
I'm sorry.
I don't believe that.
He dropped again.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe he can. We've got a quorum and it's not an issue. So, but hopefully he can call back in, and if you can plug him back in, that would be great. The next thing that we're going to do is, and if it meets with everyone, the commission members' approval, we have 3 matters to address. And what I would like to do is to do each one as a separate public hearing where we will open the public hearing, first ask the sponsor to speak, then ask anyone from the council that wishes to speak, and then open it up to the phone lines. The first thing that we will address will be the substitute resolution RS 2020 -480, and that's Councilman Mendez and Councilman Rosenberg. So I think we would address that first. Then our thought was to move from there to the second hearing, which would be on the amendment number 1 to substitute resolution RS 2020-480, which is also sponsored by Councilman Mendez. And then the third thing, we'd then close that hearing and then move to the third public hearing, which would be on resolution RS 2020-518, which is Councilman Glover and Swope's proposed resolution. Does that sound like a good way to proceed with everyone?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good. Then what, at this time, what we'll do is we will open the public hearing on substitute resolution RS 2020-480. That is sponsored by Councilman at Large Bob Mendez and my councilman, Dave Rosenberg. So first, I would like, Councilman Mendez, would you like to give us an explanation of substitute resolution 480, and then we will go from there.
Thank you, Chair Branstetter. Can you hear me okay?
Fine, I can. Mm-hmm.
All right, fantastic. Well, so I think everybody knows that there is a petition-driven referendum item that was submitted to the clerk's office with a lot of signatures several weeks ago. And it's my understanding that the Election Commission is close to verifying that there are adequate signatures. for that. And I know this isn't a hearing about that petition, but to understand this proposed amendment to the charter, it really has to be understood as a reaction to that petition. The petition is flawed in many ways, and most setting aside the substantive, whether the changes are a good idea or a bad idea, the sloppiness of that petition is that rather than deleting language they don't like from the charter and then replacing it, they just add language to the charter which will create multiple direct inconsistencies. If that petition were to pass, it would create inconsistencies between different provisions about who's got authority to enter leases and approve leases. It would create inconsistencies about under what circumstances the council could approve a tax levy. And the inconsistencies really would be troubling for governing Nashville. And this amendment seeks to resolve the inconsistencies in favor of the current charter language and against the proposed petition. And then moving on to the substance, the petition would be really debilitating to the Metro government. It would create many referendums. By my count, it would be at least 20 referendums this century. We would have had over one a year. Every tax rate that Metro has ever approved, ever in the history of the government, has been more than 2%. So every tax increase would have had to go on a ballot. The lease for the Ford Ice Center is more than 20 years. That would have required a referendum. There are communication tower leases that are more than 20 years. Those would have required referendums. Current legislation pending for leasing a sliver of Rose Park in Edge Hill to Belmont University is over 20 years. That would require a referendum. We would move to governing by referendum, which is outside the intent and the character of the charter. And so whether it's due to the process perspective that it creates open conflicts between different provisions, or the substantive problems with the petition, the confusion and the difficulty to create essentially mandates that we try to clean up the charter. And this amendment is designed to solve the problems, or at least as many as I can solve, that are created by the petition that's pending. And those are the reasons that I've offered this.
Do you, is there anything specifically that you would like to direct our attention to? I mean, I'm assuming we've all read the provisions. And if not, Councilman Rosenberg, is there anything you would like to add as also a sponsor of the resolution?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with everything Councilman Mendez just said.
Okay. I probably should have said this in the interest of full disclosure, that Councilman Mendez is my law partner. That has no impact on any decision that I'm going to make, and I'm sure it has no impact on anything that he does. But I felt in the interest of full disclosure, I should let everyone know that. And I'm proud to have him as my law partner. So at this time, I would assume, with everyone's permission, we will open the floor to people who have called in. I've got an attendee list that looks like there may be 2 people in queue. Is the live operator available?
Mr. Branstetter, this is Kevin Lyons in the call center. So yeah, you just contact me or notify myself. And as of right now, we don't have any calls waiting.
Oh, okay. Then, if no one has called in, does anyone else wish to speak who's present? I neglected to ask if any of the other council people that are as participants wish to address, and I apologize for not doing that. Ms. Henderson or Mr. Glover or Mr. Syracuse, would any of y'all like to address the substitute resolution 480?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Glover.
Yeah, this is not really to address the substitute, but I did find out just a little while ago that the petition signed by the people would be on the ballot. They verified enough signatures now. So I just wanted to let you know that that is happening now.
Good, thank you. Thank you for that. I had heard that they were having a meeting today, but that's certainly good to know. So,
all right, thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Councilmember Syracuse. I don't have any comments at this time, but I appreciate it very much.
Good. Well, we appreciate your willingness to serve as chairman of the Charter Revision Committee.
And Mr. Chair, this is Kevin again, just for the record, just to let everyone know, the call-in number is 629-255-1971.
Okay. And at this time, do you have anyone in the queue?
No, sir, we don't.
Okay, then unless there is...
Mr. Chair, this is Jim Murphy. I'd like to know if either of the Misters Coopers have anything they would like to add at this point.
That's a good point. Thank you. Don't everybody talk at once.
This is John. I don't have anything to add. I'm happy to help clarify anything if there are any questions, but I have nothing further to add to what Councilman Mendez said.
And yes, Mr. Chair, this is Bob Cooper, and like Director Cooper, I have no further comments to make on this.
Thank you. Well, then, if no one is called in during the interim, what we will do at this point is we will declare the public hearing closed, and we will now deliberate, the commission members will deliberate on substitute resolution RS 2020-480. We could either have discussion or we could have a motion and then discussion. It's really whatever the will of the commission is.
Mr. Chair, this is Jim Murphy again. Can I ask Councilman Mendez a question?
Absolutely.
Bob, I think we got it from John Cooper, an amendment to the substitute 480. And I just want to make sure we're looking at kind of the final version of what you're proposing. So do I assume that the amendment is part of what you were describing earlier in regards to 480?
Yes, thank you for that question. I had heard Chair Brandstetter saying that he would want to have a separate public hearing on the amendment, and so I didn't. Okay. I didn't describe that, but briefly to answer your question, give the time urgency to try to get on the same ballot as the petition. Moving quickly, and the amendment, which you mentioned, is meant. It was a cleanup, and my description really applied to both. So yes, the description applies.
Okay.
And Jim, the reason for doing it this way is the substitute resolution has been not adopted but approved for further consideration by the council. The amendment, will it be considered on the 15th, Bob?
Yes.
It'll be considered, and so in the event that it did not go through, we thought we would consider it separately. In the event it does go through, then we have opined on it. So
that's fine.
That was the thought process on that. Anyone have further questions of the sponsor or Metro Legal or Council Director? David, turn your mic on. Oh, good. Thank you. We can hear you now.
Okay. My question is, assuming that this petition has qualified, should this amendment pass the council, does that mean that both these items would be on the ballot in December?
I think that's probably either a Bob Cooper or an Alex Dickerson question, but I'm assuming so. Is that correct?
Yes, my understanding is that both will be on the ballot on December 5.
Thank you.
Okay, further discussion on the substitute resolution? If not, then we'll entertain a motion to either recommend adoption to the council or recommend that the council not adopt this resolution.
Mr. Chair, I would move that we recommend adoption or approval or adoption or whatever the appropriate terminology is of this amendment to the council.
And I second Mr. Murphy's motion.
Oh, we've got Mr. Harden back.
Yeah, I'm in and out. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Hal. Glad to know you're back. Okay, we have a motion to that the Charter Revision Commission approves and recommends adoption to the council of substitute resolution RS 2020-480. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Mr. Chair, I would just commend Councilman Mendez and Councilman Rosenberg for their efforts to eliminate any confusion regarding the petition. So I do want to commend them for doing this.
Good, thank you. Good, all right. If there's no further discussion, then what we'll need to do is have a roll call vote on the motion by Mr. Murphy, seconded by Mr. Harden, to recommend adoption or approval to the Metro Council of substitute resolution RS 2020-480. So if you would please call the roll, Ms. Waits.
Yes, Ms. Behan.
Aye.
Mr. Branstetter.
Aye.
Mr. Harden.
Aye.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Short Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
7 votes in favor, none against.
Good. Thank you. And I also echo Councilman Mendez, our appreciation for your helping to clear some of these issues up. Okay, at this time, then we'll turn to the second public hearing that we will have, which is on the amendment number 1 to substitute resolution RS 2020-480. That is it deletes what was proposed to be section 18.18 of the charter under Article 18, and then adds a new section under Section 5, Article 18, which would become Article 8 or Section 18.20. Councilman Mendez, that is, excuse me, that is your proposed amendment. Anything further you would like to add on just the amendment to your substitute resolution?
Sure. So as you mentioned, this amendment tweaks 2 things, and I'll briefly explain what's different now compared to 2 weeks ago when we got the substitute added. First of all, the part about no private right of action, we're moving pretty quickly, and a few people raised questions about whether the language that was in the substitute that we talked about a few minutes ago might have some unintended consequences. I think the best thinking is it probably doesn't have unintended consequences, but just because everybody's moving fast and so we don't have to worry about it, the decision was made basically to strike the part about no private right of action and let whatever the law is right now will stand without trying to change that, just to avoid a risk of an unintended consequence. And then the part that gets added, the new 18.20, relates to sports facilities. And a couple weeks ago when we got the substitute added, we really weren't ready to comment on that. There is a feeling among many in the community that if there's development related to sports stadiums, that the public needs to be careful, the council should be careful, the government should be careful to not have a big giveaway. And so what we try to do in this add-on is to reaffirm that the council and the mayor have the ability to put limitations on contracts related to sports teams and sports teams development, but to not go as far as the language that's in the petition-led item. So bottom line, we weren't ready a couple weeks ago to add something, and this is consistent with what I described earlier in trying to make sure there's not confusing language and the charter remains a clear document. So thank you, and I appreciate y'all's support on this one.
Okay. If I could ask a question, Ms. Waits had pointed something out to me that I appreciated. If we delete section 18 or article, section 18.18 about no private right of action, would we need to renumber that as new section 18.19 instead of 18.20, or is that something Mr. Cooper, John Cooper, or Bob Cooper, that it just procedurally gets taken care of as far as numbering so that everything's sequential? How is that handled if this amendment gets approved?
So this is John Cooper. I can tweak the section number in the amendment before it goes to the council Monday morning. So however you want it numbered is perfectly fine with me, and I won't speak for
it's consecutively numbered. That would be great. So we don't have a section 18 and then a section 20. So no other sponsor currently on the amendment number 1, Mr. Mendez's amendment to the substitute resolution. Would any of the other members of council who are on the call like to address this amendment? Okay. Hearing none, then we will open it up for public discussion, the public hearing. Do we have anyone on the line wishing to address the commission? Is our operator there?
There's no calls waiting in the queue.
Okay. So, okay, with no calls waiting in the queue, then I think we can declare the public hearing on amendment number 1 to substitute resolution RS 2020-480 closed. And at this time, would entertain either discussion on the amendment or a motion to recommend approval or a motion to not recommend approval.
Move to approve.
Okay, is that Ms. Behan?
Yes.
Do we have a second to the motion?
Second.
Was that Ms. Short-Jones?
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion being properly made and appropriately seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing no one wishing to discuss the motion, then Ms. Waits, if you would call the roll on the motion to approve and recommend to the council that they approve or adopt amendment number 1 to substitute resolution RS 2020-480.
Yes. Ms. Behan?
Aye.
Mr. Branstetter?
Aye.
Mr. Harden?
Aye.
Ms. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy? Mr. Murphy, I see you're unmuted.
Aye. Sorry.
Oh, it's fine. Ms. Short-Jones?
Aye.
Mr. Wilson?
Aye.
7 in favor, none against.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Waits. Okay, then at this time, we will turn to the third public hearing that we will have today, and that is on resolution number RS 2020-518. That is Councilman at Large Steve Glover's proposed resolution. We will open the public hearing, and Mr. Glover, we'll ask you to tell us about your proposed resolution.
Okay, and Mr. Chair, thank you. If you don't mind, I may ask that our attorney, John Cooper, just clarify if I misrepresent anything that I say, because I'm not an attorney. And so therefore I will try to make sure I quote it properly. The amendment that I've got, and this is the first question I have to ask Mr. Cooper, is this actually amendments we're talking about blending into the substitute that has been adopted or that will be recommended, Mr. Cooper?
Yeah, so under the council rules, the council will consider each individual amendment one at a time. So under the substitute resolution 480, there's one amendment. Under the resolution 518, which you are sponsoring, there are 3 amendments. And so the council will consider each of those individually. Each one has to get 27 votes to move forward. Of those that get 27 votes, those get rolled into substitute resolution 480, and then the resolution itself must get 27 votes.
Okay, all right, thank you. And so thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me the clarification. So the amendment I've got on my bill, the first one is to not allow a greater than a 12% property tax increase to be approved by the council without going to the voters on a referendum if it falls under Tennessee state law. And I'm just hearing rumors of what's likely to come up in the next legislative session. So that's why I've written it along this context, or had it written along this context to fit with if state law does get involved. If it does not get involved, I'm going to ask Mr. Cooper again, if state law prohibits this, then this amendment would basically be irrelevant. And I think that's correct, Mr. Cooper, is it not?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. So that's what the first one is that if state law changes, it allows a certain percentage over a 2-year period. You could do a 9% one year, a 3% the next year, or you could do 0 and 12, but on any given 2-year period, not greater than 12% without a referendum going to the people.
Okay, and then your second, the next part of your resolution.
Okay, then the next has to do with executive orders issued by the mayor declaring a state of emergency. After a 30-day period, if you want an extension, it would have to come to the council and would have to get 30 affirmative votes in order to renew the executive order. And basically the same thing with section 2 of this. If the health department did it, it would also have to come to the council for 30 members to affirm the extension of the state of emergency or the resolution that's been adopted by the health department. The final one, if that's okay with you, Mr. Chair. The council should not adopt a resolution proposing amendments to this charter more often than twice during a term. Not moving that one. But what I am asking for is that they be moved to once a year if the people wanted to bring a petition, as opposed to only every 2 years. So I believe that sums it up on what I put in there. And Mr. Cooper, if there's anything I missed, if you can help me fill in any blanks. If I haven't, that's fine too.
No, sir, you covered it all.
All right, thank you.
If I may ask either Bob Cooper or John Cooper a question, when it comes time for the council to vote on the resolution Councilman Glover has proposed, will each separate, he's got basically four changes, will each of those be voted on separately, or is it voted on as a package?
For the council, there are 3 amendments that Councilman Glover is proposing. Each one of those would be voted on separately, and then the amendment Councilmember Mendez has proposed would be voted on separately. And each of those must get 27 votes in order to be rolled into the master resolution, so to speak, which then has to get 27 votes. So it's a 2-step process.
Okay. Then does Councilman Swope, is he on the line? I don't think so.
No, sir. He's out of the country.
Oh, so he left it to you.
That's okay.
Yeah. Does anyone have any? Well, I guess next is, do any other members of council that are on the line, would anyone like to speak on this proposed amendment? proposed resolution, excuse me, the proposed resolution.
I would briefly, Mr. Chair. This is Bob Mendez.
Yes, Councilman Mendez.
For all of these, each of the three of them, I'm opposed to them. The going in reverse order, starting with having petition items get on the ballot more often. Honestly, I think if anything, we should tighten up the charter as far as how the items get on a referendum by petition. The executive order piece really just sort of offends my sensibilities on separation of powers. It sort of basically outlaws executive orders to last more than 30 days. And then the first one about the 12% every 2 years, that's arbitrary number that will limit the ability of the government to move forward. And I think we'll live to regret sort of cap. So for those reasons, I'd be opposed to these. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Councilman.
Mr. Chairman, can I speak on the second amendment on here, please?
Yes, absolutely. Councilman Rosenberg.
Thank you. I think there are a series of problems here. I'm not sure whether Tennessee law allows this anyway, but I feel like when politicians start getting involved in overruling the rulings of epidemiologists and experts, you can very quickly find 195,000 Americans dead, and wouldn't think that would be a very good idea in our case either. I know I'm not qualified to speak on public health emergencies. Also, there are just real logistical problems here. We have meetings every 2 to 3 weeks, which would in some cases require a special meeting for us to be able to extend a public health order. And even the initial, our filing deadline is 11 days before our council meeting. So theoretically, we would need to make the decision to extend an executive order 4 to 5 days after it's put in place. And I don't think 4 to 5 days into the most recent order, we had any idea what we were dealing with and wouldn't have been in a position to do so. This amendment's just a mess to me, and I hope you agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilman Rosenberg. Anyone else, any other member of council would like to address this before we turn to the call-in numbers? If not, then is our live operator available? Is our live operator standing by?
Yes, and there are no calls in the queue, Mr. Chair.
Okay. I'm a little surprised. I would have thought we would have had some calls, but since we have not, then what I would do at this point is, in the absence of anyone else wishing to address it, we will declare the public hearing closed, and we will now address resolution number RS 2020-518. I would entertain if there's discussion or questions of Councilman Glover, or if not, we would entertain a motion to either recommend approval or adoption of resolution RS 2020-518, or to recommend that the council not adopt or approve this resolution.
I just have one more comment, Chair, if I may.
You may. Go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
While I appreciate what the others are saying, I also am confident that the people's petition has better than a great chance of passing. And what I'm trying to do is give an alternative here that folks will be able to look into. Furthermore, we can all look at data. We all look at data. I look at numbers all the time. And I've spent most of the day looking at data that really discredits a number of things that we've been told for several months. Now, everybody will have their own opinions, but this is out there strictly for the people to decide if they like it or not. The threshold on this is pretty high, but I just feel like that at certain points We are elected by the people to represent the people. And so that's what I'm trying to accomplish with this. With regards to the 12%, if we've got a good reason to spend a lot more than that, we need to be able to make that case to the public. And if we're able to make that case to the public, then the public would go and vote in order to have their property taxes raised greater than the 12%. Realizing in one term, you could raise it as much as 24% without ever a referendum. I also calculated against inflationary numbers over the last 100 years and the last 10 years. 3% annual is a very fair number on the inflationary numbers. So I didn't arbitrarily pick it. I actually looked and studied what inflation has been doing. And, you know, the last thing I believe that we need to do as government is every time we need money, we just reach into the taxpayers' pockets and bring it out. And that's all I have to add to that. Thank you.
Steve, if I could, or Councilman Glover, if I could ask you a question, was there on the resolution about the executive orders and health orders, is there a reason for 30 council members affirmative? Was that just to be 3/4 of the council? I'm not aware of anything else in the council that requires that kind of a vote, and I was curious as to why.
Well, I did that to where the threshold was risen, or it was greater than what it is now. Reason being is because I've been around this a long, long time, and you know, whenever somebody makes their mind up, they can get it. They can either kill it or get it done there. And so I'm just trying to make sure that the people of Nashville at least have a say in this, because there's a lot of information out there that people disagree with right now. People, as I'm sure you're very aware of, Mr. Chair, are pretty upset, and the fuses are pretty short out there. And so I'm merely trying to give an option for folks. I mean, they would have to vote this in. If it doesn't get voted in, then it naturally fails. And if it is in conflict with state law, it would automatically be gone in the same breath. I'm simply trying to work and let the people vote on issues that affect their daily lives, because there's a lot of people who have lost homes, lost businesses, and everything else. And I think the last 6 months has taught us some pretty harsh lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Glover.
Mr. Branstetter?
Yes.
Could I bring to your attention, there are 2 hands raised, Councilman Rosenberg and Mr. Jameson with the mayor's office.
Okay. I'm sorry. I did not see that. So can somebody turn on, do you know which one went up first?
No.
Well, then why don't we go with Councilman Rosenberg first? If somebody can unmute his mic and.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, that was a leftover hand.
What about, and the other one was
Mr. Jameson.
Thank you, Chairman Branstetter. I was prepared to defer to Councilman Rosenberg. Always the bridesmaid, Councilman Rosenberg, but thank you for speaking. I did want to echo, certainly with enormous respect for Councilman Glover and the years of service he has provided to the council and to the school board. The mayor's office is nevertheless occasionally called upon to call balls and strikes on legislation before the council. In this instance, with respect, we would echo the concern eloquently voiced by Councilmember Mendez and Rosenberg previously. The 12% tax restriction would essentially function as a in Metro charter, because it's currently drafted, at least in the opinions of the Metro Legal Department beginning in 2006, there would be a legal constraint on the ability to impose that without a change in state law. And duly noting that it clearly states to the extent permitted by state law, which is a great preamble, but nevertheless at the moment apparently it is not permitted by state law. That would cause concern. The other concern we have is that if reading correctly with respect to emergency health orders having a 30-day duration with a renewal for 14 days, in addition to the timing constraints that Councilman Rosenberg eloquently noted, where council members would have to almost immediately determine whether or not renewal was required, if the extent of the entire application is 44 days, I think we've seen just in recent months that that is sometimes not a necessary or sufficient period, and the notion of having to be limited to that duration causes concern to the administration. For those, and again, the reasons voiced by the previous council members, we respectfully relay our opposition to the Charter Commission. Thank you, Chairman.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Jameson. We appreciate your comments. I have a question. I guess it's maybe a Bob Cooper, John Cooper, or Alex question, Alex Dickerson question. I think I understand if the petition drive now is going to be on the ballot, what would happen if it passed, and what would happen if Councilman Council-at-Large Mendez's proposed resolution passed. What is if the amendment that Councilman Glover is proposing is on the ballot at the same time as the petition drive is on the ballot, and they both pass? How are those reconciled, or is that something that just would have to be determined at an appropriate time?
This is John. I can give my for what it's worth. I think there obviously would be a conflict in the charter. To the extent state law did allow any of these things, then I think it would. Right now, the position from the Department of Law over the years has been that under current state law, you cannot have a cap on the tax rate. That only the council has the authority to make that determination. So if state law did not authorize it, then neither of them would be effective if the court ruled that way. If state law was changed to allow it, I would hope that the state law that did that would clarify the matter so that the new original did apply. But it certainly would create a conflict that would have to be sorted out at some point.
Okay, thank you.
And this is Alex Dickerson. I think legal department agrees with that analysis.
Okay, thank you. I know it's kind of in a vacuum, hard to maybe give an opinion, but I was just curious as to how all this might fit together if we end up with a full slate of charter amendments on the ballot. And thank you for indulging me in my questions. Okay, any further discussion, or if not, we would entertain a motion on RS 2025-18. Don't everybody talk at once.
Move to disapprove.
Okay, so was that Ms. Behan?
Yes, sir.
And is that motion to disapprove the entirety of the resolution RS 2025-18?
Yes, sir.
Second. David Wilson.
Oh, David, thank you. Okay, we have a motion appropriately made by Ms. Behan that we recommend disapproval of RS 2025-18, properly seconded by Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing no discussion on the motion, then we're ready for a vote. Ms. Waite, you'll need to do the roll call again, please.
Okay, Ms. Behan.
Let me see if I get this right. It's an aye to disapprove.
Yes. The motion is to disapprove, and if you wish to disapprove, you would vote aye. If you are against the motion to disapprove, you would vote nay.
Aye.
Mr. Branstetter.
Aye.
Mr. Harden.
Aye.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Short-Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
7 in favor, none against.
Okay. I believe that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there any other business that any of the members of the commission would like to raise or discuss?
Aye.
Okay, if not, then I guess we would entertain a motion to adjourn. And before we do that, I want to thank all the members of the commission for being present. I want to thank the members of council who took their time to work on amendments and to be present and speak today. And one last question: is there any? The public hearing is closed, but did anyone ever call in at any point?
No, sir. No calls at all.
Okay, so no one's running late. So, okay, then I guess we would entertain
Mr. Grenster, I'm sorry. I wanted to confirm something that Councilman Glover shared with you all earlier, which is that the director of the election commission did send me an email a short time ago confirming that the signatures on that charter amendment petition have been verified.
Okay. Good. Thank you for confirming that. So we now know that that's going to move forward. So anything else? If not, then we would entertain a motion to adjourn, and we will conclude the meeting.
So moved.
I heard Mr. Harden. I think I heard maybe Ms. Short Jones. We'll record that as Ms. Waits, I'll let you determine who spoke first. Okay, we've got a motion to adjourn. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye. Oh, well, we need to do a roll call. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ms. Waits, if you don't mind.
Okay, Ms. Behan.
Aye.
Mr. Branstetter.
Aye.
Mr. Harden.
Aye.
Ms. McLaughlin.
Aye.
Mr. Murphy.
Aye.
Ms. Short Jones.
Aye.
Mr. Wilson.
Aye.
All in favor, Mr. Branstetter.
Okay, then we will adjourn. Ms. Waits, I would ask that, as you had done the last time, if you would prepare a letter to send to the, I guess it would go to Mr. Syracuse as chairman of the Charter Revision Committee, letting them know what our votes are so that it can be reported out when the amendments come before the council. I think, Mr. Cooper, isn't that how we've done it in the past? Mr. John Cooper?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
Okay. And I guess we need to do that before Tuesday night. Is that correct?
Yes, the committee will meet Tuesday afternoon.
Okay. Elizabeth, can you do that for us?
Yes, thank you.
I couldn't hear you.
Yes, sir. Happy to do that.
Yeah, thank you. And again, we appreciate your help with the minutes and making sure the meeting runs smoothly. Okay, then I guess we're done. Again, thanks to everyone for participating.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.